Senior Pro, the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, Stanley Henkeman. Stanley, we got you on air because we hear that Barry Steenkamp is now ready to meet up with Oscar after, he did ask during the trial and just before that, if I could meet you and apologize. How does the process work? Good morning, Stanley.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. It's a process that is gaining a lot of ground lately, but it's not a new process. It is steeped. It comes from very traditional and indigenous backgrounds. It has strong influences in indigenous cultures. But essentially, the way the program works is that the offender normally initiates the dialogue.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and as in this case, if there's an acceptance by the offender or the victims, then it can happen. But normally what happens is that you don't have these two parties sitting together. It needs to be facilitated because you can imagine there's still a lot of emotions, and so it needs to be facilitated by somebody who's competent to facilitate. And then some of the aspects that one wants to see in this process is, first of all, regret, and remorse. The fact that there is an apology, and it must, for it to be successful, the apology has to be genuine, and it has to actually directly address what went wrong. Because obviously the aim of this dialogue is some kind of reconciliation, but also rehabilitation for the offender. Because their whole idea, and that's why it is very strongly advocated and practiced within the prison context, because it's also part of the offender's reintegration process. But let me immediately say that very often there are two things that's missing, and I hope that it will come out in this dialogue if it happens, and that is, very often people don't talk about redress and restitution.
Yes.
And I think what should happen is that Oscar should also be asking, Reva's parents, what can I do? What is it that I can do to show you that I am remorseful? And it doesn't really only have to be a monetary thing, but there must at least be some kind of effort or some kind of indication that I want to do something, just to make it right.
We're speaking to Stanley Henkeman, who is a senior program of Institute of Justice and Reconciliation. Stanley, under what circumstances is the process encouraged? Is it just murder?
No. It is encouraged in all circumstances because it is a different kind of justice, a different take on justice. The justice that we know through the courts is retributive justice. You did something, so you get your punishment. Mm-hmm. This kind of justice is restorative justice, and it's really to restore relationships. So even in the smallest of things, we practice it all the time within our families, between friends and so forth, and it's really aimed at restoring relationships.
Stanley, how do you restore a relationship that never existed? That was and that's why in this case with Oscar and Reva's parents, because there was no relationship, it is really about the issues of regret and remorse and for them. Now let me also say that there's a big burden that we put on the victim because the offender wants redemption. Because that's the objective of the offender. Mm-hmm. He wants to be forgiven, and unfortunately, the system puts a lot of pressure on the victim. Because if the victim does not want to have this dialogue, then they become the bad people. And in this case, Reva's mother did indicate that she would like to have a conversation, but we mustn't just accept that she is ready to forgive and all of that,
because he took away something from them which they can never replace.
So it's basically the process, and both parties might heal, and the victims or whoever remains behind, in this case Barry and the wife, can get some kind of closure.
Exactly. And it's going to take them a long time to get closure, but they can ask the questions that they've always wanted to ask, and they can say to Oscar, please be honest with us. This is not a court case. What happened? Why did you do it? They might not get the answers, and that's often where this dialogue might not work, because if there's no honesty on the side of the offender, the value of the process is diminished.
So perhaps advice to Oscar is not to drink a lot of water. He might need to go to the bathroom. So that might be a bit of a problem. Look, thank you very much, Stanley. We really appreciate it. A bit later, I thought I'd let you know we'll be talking to a man by the name of Thabo Memetse, ex-offender and works at More Africa Itlhokomele. He ended the life of his loved one, and the family of his deceased spouse will not hear anything of it. And that's a side, I suppose.
One can understand that.
He will have to live with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Stan.
You're welcome.
Thank you.